So that's us, and if you know anyone who wants to buy that, give me a call. I have some cards up here. Um, so our production company, we're an indie production company locally. James and I basically pride ourselves in being able to produce these type of visual effects laden scripts at a reasonable cost. And one of the ways that we do that is we are a zero overhead organization. We don't have studio space. We don't have a production office. We don't have full-time employees. Um, so how do we get anything made? Well, uh, in the area of Seattle, we have a lot of big companies. We have Microsoft, we have Amazon, we have Boeing, and they require a lot of internal video. They require a lot of training video. They require a lot of commercials. And so there's a lot of production companies around here that service those needs. And what we do is we leverage those studios and their equipment, and we tend to, in Seattle, there's a high season and a low season for making film. The high season is when the sun is in the sky. The low season is all winter. So what we do is our productions are done primarily in the winter when studio space is cheap, people are willing to give us a discount, and in return, instead of that studio space being empty, they have a paying client, and we get work done that way. So that also allows us to not be putting any of our investors' money. So we work on an investor system. We go out and we solicit money from investors. They give us money and we make things like you just saw, and then we attempt to sell that to make their money back. But by having a zero overhead policy, we're able to put every single cent onto the screen, as opposed to paying for office space that we wouldn't necessarily need. So this type of, oh, thank you.
There we go.
This type of zero, this type of zero overhead also goes to employees. In general, we don't have employees. We do not have any full-time employees. James and I are both managers of the LLC, which means that we don't get paid until our investors get recouped their money. In a project like Tabitha, from conception into sale can be 5 years, which means we don't see a cent of money for 5 years. So keeping overhead down and not having ongoing costs is very key to us. We do hire employees. The state of Washington, the labor laws require for our productions that we hire employees and pay them as employees for production. But then for post-production, we almost exclusively hire contractors, aka freelance artists, to do most of our post-production.
So, as Arthur alluded to, As Arthur alluded to, he and I wear an awful lot of hats. For the purposes of this talk, he's going to be taking on the role of producer, and I'm going to be taking on the role of visual effects supervisor, in particular post-production visual effects supervisor. So as my role as post-production visual effects supervisor, I always have the opportunity and I guess the pleasure of hiring all of our visual effects artists. As Arthur suggested, we only hire freelance visual effects artists. So hopefully this is going to work. No guarantees. If it doesn't work, we'll just skip it. But before you come and work with us, I'm going to ask to see your reel. So I guess it's only fair that I show you mine. So let's give this a try. No guarantees. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I have no idea why it's not working. I did test it. I swear to God I tested it. All right, well, we'll skip it. If you want to see my reel, let me know and I'll send you a link. The way we kind of see the market is that there are 3 current opportunities for visual effects artists in the Seattle market. There's a studio full-time employees, there's a studio contractor or freelancer, and of course there's an independent freelancer. We exclusively hire independent freelancers, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just quickly, a studio full-time employee, you actually go full-time to a studio, you get a paycheck, you know where your paycheck is going to come week after week, month after month. You work for them. Studio contractor freelancer, you'll actually go to work for a studio for a short period of time. Usually it's because they have taken on a large project that they just can't do in-house. And so they'll bring in studio freelancers to come in and work in the studio along with their full-time employees to finish up the project. And of course, independent freelancer. So the independent freelancer is basically a small business owner. They are out there beating the streets, trying to find their work. They don't actually work for a company. They usually work for smaller production companies like us. They're hungry and they're scrappy. What's really interesting about being an independent freelancer is that not only do you have to have the chops as far as art goes, and as far as the technical chops go, but you also have to be kind of a small business owner, right? So you have to have some knowledge of the business because you're running your own small business. What's really great about being an independent freelancer is it's a great way to kind of start your path if you want to own your own studio someday. Because along the way, you're learning about the business. You're learning exactly what it is to run a small business, a small visual effects business. Okay, so let's talk more about being an independent freelancer in just a second. But first, Arthur is going to tell us about his secrets.
So this is a poorly kept secret, and the poorly kept secret is that producers are cheap. I mean, we don't begrudge you earning a living, but we would rather not pay you very much if we can get away with it. Fundamentally, we're trying to make content that will sell and recoup its cost, meaning that I'm fundamentally trying to make high quality content that I can sell. And there is what is known as the producer's triangle. This is the producer's triangle: good, fast, and cheap. This doesn't just apply to film. This applies to basically any product that you're going to bring to market in any business. You have good, fast, and cheap. You only get two of them. Pick which two you want. As producing content, our best option is to sell something, is to make something of very high quality. So we always want good. And because we don't have a lot of money, we tend to want cheap. The only reason we would want fast is if we have a deadline, a specific thing that we're trying to, a target that we're trying to hit. What is the advantage, and where you can see us avoiding fast is stuff like I mentioned earlier, that there is a downtime in the Seattle market. We film in the downtime. We specifically choose that time because we can get high quality actors, we can get a director of photography that we couldn't afford in the summer, we can get in the winter. Because that person has no jobs lined up in the winter. So as a producer, we're going to shoot for good and cheap. Additionally, the only way that we're going to make our money back is to recoup our investors' money. So if we can do a project of high quality less expensively, then the chances of making our money back is higher. Why does that matter to you? If I make my investors' money back, that means they'll fund my next project. If they fund my next project, I'll hire you for the next project. So it is important, even from everyone's perspective, that the projects make money, and that means, unfortunately, means we have to make it by a budget. And speaking of budgets, it doesn't matter what your budget is. You never have enough money. If I'm making a $10,000 short film, I'm making a $200,000 feature film, I don't have enough money. I have to go and I have to make decisions every day. I have to decide, I really would like this makeup artist, for example, but I can't afford, if I take this makeup artist, then I can't have a score. Those are the decisions I have to make. So when I'm deciding between visual effects artists, or when James and I are deciding, money does matter. It's not the only thing that matters. We don't always take the cheapest bid on anything. Quality matters because, again, we're going for good first, because that is what will sell. But it is a challenge, and it is something we have to decide. So what does that mean for you? That means that producers are going to try to negotiate with you. They're going to try to maximize their money, and they're going to try to minimize their cost. You're just going to have to accept that's part of the deal. You're going to have to negotiate. You're going to have to know what you're worth, and I think James is going to talk about that in a little bit. But it also means that when I am dealing out my post-production, if I pay an extra $100, an extra $1,000 to visual effects, that's an extra $1,000 that I'm not spending on color correction, or I'm not spending on Foley, or I'm not spending on, heaven forbid, reshoots. Those are the things that I'm not spending the money on. So I have to make an elective decision on what to spend the money on. It's not that I don't want to pay you, it's just sometimes I can't. And when you get into negotiations, there are times when we have to walk away simply because, not that you're not worth the money, but we can't afford the money.
I'll talk more about that.
But the good news is you have a skill set that we need. We want to hire you. We want you to do specific things. And if we are negotiating with you, that means that we want you to do the work. So that's a good sign. So if you're having people negotiate with you, that in general means that they're interested in hiring you. So that's a good step.
Great. All right, so let's talk about the hiring process. But before we do, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. The industry is always changing and evolving, so what I'm telling you today may not be applicable tomorrow. And this is also just our experience hiring visual effects artists. Your mileage is definitely going to vary. And we are way behind, so I'm going to try to blow through this. So hang on. Here we go. Okay, so the first part of the hiring process is we solicit artists. We always start with our go-to artists. We have a pool of artists that we've worked with in the past that we enjoy working with. We know that they can deliver on time and on budget, and we always reach out to them first. So if that particular artist isn't available for any reason, we actually will ask them for a recommendation. We'll say, hey, okay, you're not available. That sucks that you're not available. Do you have anybody that you can recommend? So what does that mean? That means that I am confirming the good old artist network. Yes, if you are outside of this network, it is not very likely that you are going to get a job. So what does that mean? That means that you need to get into this network. How do you get into the network? You go to meetups. There are a lot of really fantastic meetups. I know the After Effects meetup that's in Seattle, it meets on the Adobe campus, is just phenomenal. They're great guys. Okay, so now you go into your meetup. I want to give you a little tip on how to really get into that network. After the meetup, go up and talk to the organizer. Yeah, he's the guy that he's like the hub that all of these artists kind of revolve around. So if you go up and you chat up the organizer, get to know him. But another tip, ask him if he's going out for drinks. 9 times out of 10, after the meetup, these guys will go out to drinks. And you just say, hey, are you guys going out afterward? I'd love to join you. Go out, join them. It's amazing how a couple drinks in somebody will really loosen them up and give you the opportunity to talk up your work, exchange cards, etc. So we do post on Facebook groups. Can you hold it to the end, please? Just write it down. I really want to take your questions. We've got a lot to go through, so thank you. We do post on Facebook groups, but absolutely as the last resort. So if you're expecting to get a whole bunch of work just through Facebook groups, hold on to your hats because it's really, really difficult. Artists are really hungry, and so somebody posts a paying gig on Facebook, and artists just come in like vultures, right? If you're going to apply for a job on Facebook group, make sure that you're early and make sure that you have a really, really great reel. But more importantly, make sure that your reel matches what they're asking for. So if they're asking for 2D visual effects, make sure that you have a reel that highlights the 2D visual effects that you've done. All right, once we have identified the artists that we feel that we want to bid on the project, we'll go ahead and send out a shot list. The shot list is a detailed description of each and every shot. Before the artist actually bids, we always want to make sure that we have a conference call with the artist so that they understand exactly what the shots are and what is expected with each and every shot that we have on the list. We really try to avoid sending out raw footage. This is our intellectual property, right? We don't want this getting out into the world. And so you're kind of, in some ways, bidding blind because you haven't actually seen the footage yet. You're not exactly sure what it is you're trying to aim for. But if you really are confused as to what we want for a shot and you really kind of want to see the footage, we will actually make a very low resolution version of the footage available to you. Bidding. So this is probably the most important part of a freelancer's life is bidding. You have to learn how to bid. You have to learn how to bid extremely well. So the big thing from us as far as producers go is budget. We may have to negotiate with you. And so the only cards that we hold is that budget number, right? And so if you just come to us and you ask us, okay, well, what's the budget for, let's say we have a series of 15 shots that we want you to bid on. You're going to come to us and you're going to say, okay, well, what's the budget? We're going to lie to you. 100% of the time, we're going to lie to you. We don't want you to know what the actual budget is because that's the only leverage we have. Here's the caveat, though. What if we don't lie to you, right? We're naturally going to try to lowball you because that's what we have as leverage, but what if we don't lie to you? So now, if you say, okay, I think he's lowballing, I'm going to try to bid a little bit higher than that to try to get a little bit of extra money, well, we might have actually been honest with you. So there's this really fine balancing act that you have to kind of learn to negotiate as you go. So really the most important part of the bidding process is knowing what your time is worth. So one of the best ways that you can do that, especially as young artists, is to pay attention to how long it takes you to do stuff, right? Pay attention to how long it takes you to, do this one particular track, right? You're doing a 2D track. Pay attention to how long it takes you to do that 2D track. If you're doing a 3D track, pay attention to how long it takes you to do that. And then you can kind of start putting these pieces together so that when you get the shot list and you know what the shot is going to look like, you can say, okay, well, I know that it's going to take me, the shot needs these different elements, and I know it's going to take me X, Y, and Z to be able to put all of these elements together. So now you have actually a pretty good estimate. But as a young artist, just pay attention to how long things take for you to do.
Something about budget.
Go ahead.
So something about budget is that the budget is constantly changing. So, I mean, James Maida said that, say I have $5,000 to do visual effects on this piece. Well, the budget, it might be $5,000 today, and then I might find out that I have to spend money on something I was not anticipating, and so I have to cut that budget. So the budget can change. We also have cut shots for price. So we know that this shot was more important and ended up costing more, so we got rid of a couple other special effects shots. So the budget is totally changing. So it's almost not even a valuable number.
It can be a living entity, yeah.
Yeah.
Look development. So be really careful when you're bidding to understand whether or not the production company is expecting you to do look development. That means they're expecting you to actually come up with the original concept for the shot or for the look of the particular shot or the element in the shot, because that can be an extremely iterative process, especially when the director doesn't know what the hell they want, which is like 9 times out of 10. They think they know what they want, but they continually change their mind. So understand if they're expecting look development and make sure that you integrate that into the budget if they are. The other thing, as far as bidding goes, remember that you are a contractor. You are your own business. That means that you have to take care of taxes, you have to take care of your own health care, and you have to take care of your own equipment. The state of Washington requires contractors actually do everything completely independent of the company that they're contracting for. So that means that you have to have all of your own equipment. I am not a tax professional. I am not a lawyer. Before you start independently contracting and actually getting paychecks, make sure you understand the tax ramifications. Talk to a tax pro. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's definitely worth it. Okay, so then we ask our artists to go ahead and submit their bids. So artists are going to be bidding against each other. So we've got a set of 15 shots, and we've got 3 different artists that are all bidding on those 15 shots. So the artist will bid per shot rather than per project. So per project would be like that group of 15 shots. We'll ask them to price out each and every one of those shots rather than the entire, all 15. If we have them bid on all 15, that means all 15 of those shots have to go to a single artist. Whereas if we have them bid per shot, we can pick and choose, right? One bid might come in a little bit high for a shot, and we might go with a lower bid. But the real advantage of this is that we can have multiple artists working simultaneously. So we'll take those 15 shots and we'll actually try to break it up pretty evenly across all 3 of those artists so that everybody has a little bit of work. And that means that stuff is continually coming in and we can continually put stuff on the timelines.
And one additional thing on that, it also means that if someone flakes on us, we're less screwed. So we want to split it up because sometimes, especially if you're working with someone you haven't worked with before, you're not really, especially someone who I've not met in person, we're kind of taking a little bit of it on faith. So we want to make sure that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket.
Yep. So then we review all of the bids and we either accept, negotiate, or reject the bid. If we accept the bid, it means that we've worked with you before, we know that you're capable of doing the work, and the bid that you've given us is in the ballpark. It's either below or right on par with our budget. If we negotiate, that means that your bid is a little bit high, but we're really interested in working with you, and so we're going to see if we can get a little bit better deal from you. So if a company comes back and tries to negotiate with you, take that as a very positive thing, as Arthur said earlier, because it means that we really want to work with you. And rejection. Let's talk a little bit about rejection. You're all going to get rejected. It's gonna happen. It's just part of the entertainment industry. I don't care what part of the entertainment industry you're in, from the writer to the director. Eventually you're going to get 100 no's before you get that one yes. So get used to being rejected, but know that it's not you. Don't take it personally. I'm rejecting you, just not for a myriad different reasons. And of course, I'm not going to tell you what that reasons are, but it's extremely subjective. That process of choosing which artist to bring on is extremely subjective. So just know that it doesn't reflect negatively on you as an artist or as a human being if you happen to get rejected for that particular bid. Okay, so this is probably the most important part, the contract. So not all production companies will require you to sign a contract. Some of them are a little bit more fly-by-night, and a handshake will do. But we actually do require a contract, and we think it's important to protect both production company as well as the artist. If the production company goes out of business for some reason, you have some remedy. You know what your remedy is to get paid. So make sure that even if you don't get a contract, that you understand all of these elements before you start work. And I can't stress that enough. Make sure you understand all of these elements before you start work. So flat fee. So understand that you are not going to get overtime. So what you have bid on, that is the amount of money that you are going to get. You're not. So if you have if you've bid and you think it's going to take you like 2 days in order to finish a particular shot and it ends up taking you 4 days, you eat it. If you bid, you think it's going to take you 2 days and takes you 1 day, that's additional profit. So again, bidding is really critical. Scope of work. Make sure that you understand exactly what the scope of work is, what each shot is going to be, and what success looks like. So one of the big problems with especially working with small production companies is scope creep. So you will agree that you will be working on this shot and it will contain these elements. You hand it off and the director says, oh, wow, that's great. You know what? It would be even better if we added this additional element. So you have to make a decision. Okay, well, I didn't agree to that, but it's not that hard, so I'll go ahead and do it. So you go ahead and you integrate that additional element. You turn it in. The director's like, oh, that's fantastic. Let's add these 3 other elements, right? So suddenly you have this scope creep, and it's really cutting into your bottom line, right? Because it's going to take you additional time whether you want to or not. So you need to be able to say no. You need to be able to say, hey, this is beyond what we originally agreed on. If you have it in writing, if you have it in a contract, you know exactly what the original scope was so that you have a way to push back and say no. If you don't have that, you have no recourse. You have really no way to be able to push back and say no. So make sure you get a good scope of work.
I'll be taking this down. You saw a picture of this. This is important. I don't care what program you're in here. All those things are critical.
Term. So know when you start and what your deliverable is. Know if your deliverable is fungible, right? If it's a hard deliverable, is there an absolute drop dead date? Is it okay if you go a little bit beyond? Like Arthur was talking about, good, fast, cheap. We tend to do good and cheap. So, our deadlines tend to be a little bit more fungible. Payment. So not only know how much you're getting paid, but how you're going to get paid. Right? So what we do is if the contract is over $500, we'll pay you half up front and then half in the back end when you finish it. So we think that's just absolutely fair. It gives the artist something to live on where they're working on your project, and at the end of the contract, it gives them a reward, right? So understand just exactly how the payment works. Also understand what the net is. So we do a net 30. So we're going to guarantee that we're going to send you out a check within 30 days of completion of the project. We understand that artists are hungry and we don't want you eating ramen, so we try really hard to send out the check, within the first few days.
I want to say this. All of our contractors have been very complimentary that we send out checks quickly, which implies that they often don't get paid timely. So James is talking about this contract, and oftentimes you'll think, well, the contract is just there to protect the company. The contract is there to protect both parties so everyone understands exactly who's doing what, getting paid how, and how it's being done. Contracts are very important. It doesn't have to be really complicated. It can be a single sheet of paper that just lays this out. But you should have
It can
all
be an
the
email.
pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It just needs to have all of this stuff. You need to understand all of these elements. Work for hire. It's really important that you understand that you are a hired gun, that when you finish this particular shot, you don't own it. You can't do anything with it unless you've negotiated rights to do something with it. And that's also really critical because most production companies don't think about this. You need to make sure that you negotiate rights to be able to do something with the work you've done. for self-promotion. This means your reel. Your reel is really your ticket into the next job. So you need to constantly be working, constantly be adding things to your reel. And if you don't understand what the requirements are for you to be able to add this stuff into your reel, it's never going to go into your reel because, you know, it's possible that if they haven't given you permission, they see this stuff in your reel, they're going to come after you, and that's just bad juju. So the other thing that's really absolutely critical and most artists don't ever think about is third-party graphic elements. So as an artist, as a freelance artist, you need to make sure that you own the copyright to every single third-party element that you have in your work. So for example, I've given you a shot. In the shot, I want you to put a skyline in the background. Okay, what most people will do, they'll be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go online. And so let's go up to Imager. Oh, hey, yeah, great, there's a fantastic skyline. I'll just use that. And they grab the skyline off of Imager, and they stick it in their work, and then they turn it in. We go to our distributor, and our distributor comes to us and says, okay, have you dotted your I's and crossed your T's? Are you sure that you own absolutely every piece of work that's in this film? And we say, yes, we affirm that we own everything. Well, you know, that person that owns that Imager photo, they see it in our film, they're going to come to our distributor, our distributor is going to come to us, and then we're going to come to you, right? Because it's in the contract that you own, that you either have created and own the copyright, or you have licensed the copyright for all of the material that's in your work. So you need to be really, really careful about that because it can be very litigious in the end if you're not careful. And screen credit. So as a visual effects artist, IMDb is your resume. So make sure that you get screen credit. Make sure that you negotiate what screen credit you want. And then you need to chase production companies. A lot of production companies are extremely slow about getting things up on IMDb. So you need to constantly be monitoring your IMDb page and make sure that the production companies get your screen credit up on IMDb. Okay, so with all of that over, now, guess what? You get to make some magic. You get to do what you do best. So in the process of working on the shot, ask for feedback. Please, 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 please. A lot of artists get very precious about their work. You know, they don't want to, don't want anybody to see their work until it's completely done. Get over it. Just get over it. You know, feel free to ask that production company, whoever you're working with at the production company, for feedback. Ask early, ask often. The last thing, I would rather have an artist that's bugging me every single day. You know, we actually had one contractor that would send me 50 text messages a day. I'm not lying about that. I counted them up. They're actually 50. But I would absolutely rather have you being in contact with me constantly than at the end of 2 weeks you turn something in and I go, ooh, yeah, no, that's not at all what we wanted. So definitely ask for feedback early and often. Ask for help. A lot of times you're not going to be working with somebody like me who is a visual effects artist that really understands things, and you'll just be working with a director or a producer, but you're going to run into a technical problem. You know, eventually doing some complicated shot, you're going to run into a technical problem. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So it was really interesting on the Tabitha Witchy, the Order project that we just finished, visual effects artist that we had hired. I saw him post on one of the Facebook groups that I monitor, one of the visual effects Facebook groups that I monitor, and immediately I knew exactly what shot he was working on, and I knew exactly what problem that he was going to have. I mean, he could have come to me and I would have helped him through it, but what was amazing is how the community rallied behind him and really helped him to understand how to fix the problem. Of course he did, and the shot that he turned in was actually in the trailer, and it was absolutely fantastic. Fail fast. So as a young artist, you're not necessarily know what you're capable of, and it's really easy to bite off more than you can chew. That's fine. If we hire you and you come in and you say, I can do this shot, I can absolutely do this shot, and you find out that you can't, it's not a problem. Let us know sooner rather than later, because we're going to have to find another artist to come in and actually finish up that shot. So, don't let your ego get the better of you and let it go for like 2 weeks before you go, oh my God, I just can't do it. No, if you don't think you can do it, just let us know from the get-go. Maybe we get you some help. Maybe we just find another artist to take over for you. Again, communication is key. I like to say, if I have to send you an email and ask you how the project is going or what your status is on the project, you failed. Let me say that again. If I have to reach out to you as the supervisor and ask you what the status is, you have failed. You should always be communicating that constantly so that I know exactly what it is you're doing. Notes. Okay, so now you've completed the shot. Notes are absolutely painful. Everybody hates to get notes because most of the notes you get are just crap. They're just horrible. You don't know what to do with them. But what you need to do when dealing with notes is you need to adopt the no problem mentality, zero pushback. Somebody gives you a note, I don't care how bad it is, you tell them, oh yeah, no problem. So most of the time you need to get clarification on the note. So your first reaction to the note is probably wrong because the note is probably not what you actually think it is. You want to get clarification for the note. So the classic thing is a director gives you a note on a shot. He says the shot is too dark. What does that mean? Does it mean that you need to brighten up the luminance, or does that mean that the tone of the shot is too dark? So you need to make sure that you get clarification and negotiate. Don't be afraid to offer your ideas. If the director comes back and he says, no, I don't think that's what I want. Here's some notes. This is what I want. If you don't agree with him, offer some of the reasons that you don't agree with him, and then offer some additional ideas. Who knows? He might really get turned on by the idea that you have. And then how many rounds of notes? 3 to 5. If the rounds of notes go beyond 5, you need to have a serious talk with whoever you're working with, because now it's cutting into your bottom line, right? You've kind of bid in 3 rounds, but once you get to 4, maybe 5, you need to say, hey, if you want me to continue on, you're going to have to pay me more. That's all there is to it. And then of course you need to make sure to price the notes into the bid. All right, it's approved. Woohoo, you're a professional visual effects artist. So one of the things that's really important to understand once the shot does get approved is what's the workflow. We use a 32-bit linear EXR workflow, and so for you to be able to turn in the shot, we need to make sure that you turn the shot into with that particular format. If you don't, it really screws up our pipeline. And so we've got multiple artists, dumping stuff to our website, and we want to make sure that everything is in the right format. So understand the workflow, upload the finished shot, and go get a drink because you so deserve it. Fantastic. All right. Whew. I know that was a whirlwind. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. How did I do? Oh, wow, I did really well. So please, like, share. We have some Tabitha Witch of the Order cards up here if you'd like to take them and check us out. The other thing, this is my email address. Please, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to know what you're working on. If you have any feedback, if you would like any feedback on the work that you're doing, I know a few of you have already reached out to me, and I've been talking with you. I've really enjoyed that. We want to pay it forward, so absolutely feel free to reach out to me. And if you want to join the Fractured Future pool of artists, of course, definitely reach out to me, and I'll put you on the list, and we'll look you up next time we're ready for some additional shots. All right. Whew. Questions? Yeah.
You mentioned that the best way to connect with people at the Decoded drinks. Most of us are not 21. How will you
Could you repeat his question?
So he said that most of you aren't 21. First off, I'm sorry about that because drinking is just fantastic. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. So just go up afterward and chat up the organizer. I mean, that really is a great way to get to know him. Exchange cards, and then of course, like any good business transaction, follow up. You give him your card, he gives you his card. Follow up with him. Send him an email and say, hey man, it was great to meet you the other night. I'm really into this group, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hey, would you like to go out and grab some coffee? The worst so here's the thing about rejection, man. The worst thing that can happen is he says no. And if he says no, you move on, right? But the best thing that can happen is he can say yes. And if you don't ask, it's an automatic no. So there you go. One up here.
I was going to say the same thing, but I was also going to ask, it's a weird question, but where do you see your company in like 10 years?
Our company in 10 years. We don't see the company existing in 10 years.
So do you think you're just going to stay like at this level?
No. So the expectation is that we will have the opportunity to sell some of the projects that we're working on and kind of get folded into another production company or do a co-production deal where we would get folded into another production company.
Can you go back to that one slide that has all the, well, you had a bunch of really good stuff. Yeah, there was a bunch. Yeah, there, I thought that was really important.
The contract?
The contract is going to affect every single one of you in here. They have to deal with a contract. And knowing how to negotiate and talk about making sure that, you know, scope of work. How many times have we taken on a project and the scope of work is just like over the moon and we have to rein them back in?
And that's why we want to have scope of work in there. If we're asking for more than what's in the contract, we know we need to pay more. And we have paid more. I mean, we have gone back and said, oh, well, actually, we didn't realize that this was 5 shots. We thought it was 1 shot, but it turned out to be like 5 shots. Okay, now we have a legitimate, I mean, we come eye to eye on why we need to change the price. And we've done that. And if you satisfy everything in the contract, that's the easiest way to get hired again.
Absolutely.
You know, when we go back to the artists that we've used time and again, it's because they hit all these things. I don't necessarily, having some reliability, there's about 80,000 things going on at once when you're in a film production, specifically in production, but also in post-production. And there's so many things that are unreliable. Having reliable pieces is very valuable to me. And that's valuable to me financially and also time-wise. So people who communicate well and turn in things on time and turn in things that are of quality that meet our bars are valuable to me, and I will pay more for that.
Have you ever had anybody come back to you and say, hey, listen, the scope of work is much bigger than what you're...
Oh, yeah. No, we have one artist that we work with quite a bit, and I sprang something on him, and he took it in stride. He was really gracious about it. He went off and he tried to do it, kind of talking about adding additional elements. I added an additional element, and he took it in stride. He went off, he worked on it for a couple hours. A couple hours later, he called me up and he said, you know, I don't remember you mentioning this additional element. And I was like, I didn't. And so he said, okay, so if you want me to do that, I'm gonna have to get more money. And I said, okay, well, don't do that then. And we'll get you another contract, and we'll get you more money, and we'll make sure that element gets done. That was one of the last elements that we actually finished up because it was not absolutely critical, but it would have been nice. And I had more respect for him by pushing back than I would have if he would have actually just done it. If he would have actually done it, I would have been, man, what a sucker. You know? Seriously. But he pushed back. He said, no, you know, that's not what we agreed on. And I had so much respect for him after that.
Because we want a win-win. We don't want to be as much as I would like to pay you a little bit less. We don't want to take advantage of you, and we want you to be able to. We value what you're doing, and we value that by paying you. And again, we try to make the contract as clean and as clear as possible so we can both agree. We might not have been able to afford, you know, we talk about budgets changing. James, when this situation happens, means I get a call and be like, okay, where's the extra $500 or $1,000 or $200 or whatever it is in the budget? And I'm like, all right, give me half an hour. And then I'm going through all of my pieces of the budget and seeing where I can find this extra money. And if I can't find the extra money, the shot is not done.
Yeah.
We just throw the shot out. I mean, this show had, I don't know, it's 53 minutes long, and there were 102 visual effects shots. So there was a lot
That's
of
a lot.
Moving around, and of course, I mean, there was at least one scene that we threw out that's more of a production value, but we couldn't figure out how to do the visual effects, so we threw out a scene. As a writer, that hurts me deeply, but it worked out just fine. But we did throw out a scene because we couldn't figure out how to get the visual effects to work within the budget that we wanted, so we had to toss it.
Yeah. Pick one. Over here.
So I'm not really an artist, but I was just kind of curious. There's been I just read a lot about doing real-time rendering in game engines instead of whatever the normal thing you guys use. I don't know. I was just wondering if you guys have messed around with that.
So the real-time stuff, it just isn't quite there for kind of the level of realism that we're going for. It's getting really, really close. There are an awful lot of ray tracers out there that are now GPU accelerated, which cuts the rendering time in a quarter. And so we are starting to experiment with Octane and Redshift to see if those are going to be able to facilitate our needs. I'm not a huge fan of Octane. I just don't like the look of it. But Redshift is looking pretty good. It's a naive, I think it's called a naive ray tracer rather than a physical ray tracer. So yeah, it's getting there, but it's just not there quite there yet for us. Yeah.
Do you ever actually tell a VFX artist the budget, or are you just playing head games?
It's head games. It's head games. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll give you a little trick. I'll give you a little trick there. So you can actually estimate the budget yourself. So one of the things that I might not give you the right budget for the number of shots that you're working on, but if you ask me what the budget of the show is, I might give you the actual budget, the total budget, okay? Then you can ask me, okay, well, how many visual effects shots are there total in the project? And I'll tell you, okay, well, there are 69 shots. And now you can start doing the math in your head, and you can say, okay, of that budget, about 1/3 is going to go to visual effects because there are so many shots. And then, how do I break that down? So then you can kind of decide how much I'm lying to you, basically.
So, what exactly, do you know if there's like opportunities for long distance work?
Absolutely.
Because I'm planning on not living here or anywhere near any VFX studio or any kind of film studio for at least 2 years. I'm literally going to be in the middle of nowhere. So, do you know?
It's a good place to be.
Okay.
He's from North Dakota.
South Dakota, get it right.
Sorry.
No, I'm going to Yuma, Arizona, and there's literally nothing.
Sure.
No job opportunities around there for anything.
Well, that's the beauty of the internet.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to have a physical presence in order to do great work. I mean, I think all of the artists that we work with are not in Seattle. So
But they're not super far away.
they're all in the state of Washington, because that was one of the requirements for us to get funding from the state of Washington, was that all of our a vast majority of the people we hire were in the state of Washington. But yeah.
Your tax dollars help pay for our shoot.
Yes, thank you.
But I will say this: it is easier to meet people in easier to make those relationships, to meet people in person. As humans, we just are. I'm more comfortable with someone that I've sat down with and talked with for 10, 15 minutes. We could be talking about Harry Potter for all. It doesn't matter. But I feel like human connection a little bit more than someone that's online, and that may change as the generations change and people are more and more comfortable. Just all their interactions are online. But there's something very specific to an in-person meeting.
Yeah, and that's something else that I'll kind of add. If you are working remotely, text messaging is fine, but there's just something about picking up the phone and calling somebody and talking with them on the phone. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you can work through problems just by picking up the phone and talking with someone, rather than going back for like 10, 15 minutes. My thumbs get tired. I'm sorry. I'm old. So pick up the phone.
And another thing is, if you, and this is what we try to do when we travel to Los Angeles or something, is if you work with a bunch of people in Seattle, and you make a trip to Seattle for whatever reason, schedule a whole bunch of coffee meets. Like just boom, 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 but you'll be caffeinated off your mind, but do it, and then you get those in-person meetings, even though you're in Arizona.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be regularly. No offense, I don't want to see you every week. Like, that's just, that I don't want to see any of my artists every week, but there you go. Yeah.
Where are you from in South Dakota?
Deadwood. So have you guys seen the HBO show Deadwood?
Oh my.
There's an actual HBO show called Deadwood. It's based on a real place. That's where I was born.
What's it about?
It's about cowboys, and they use the F word a lot. No, they do. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I think you kind of partially answered it, but I was trying to determine how much, how do you determine the cost for CGI or VFX in the film?
That is a great question. So usually what we do when we're in pre-production is that we will reach out to one of the effects artists that we've been working working with a lot and ask them to bid on the entire project. And they will basically say, okay, I've gone through and there are 69 shots. I've identified that there are 69 visual effects shots. I think that those shots are probably going to take about 2 weeks, and I'm going to guess that it's going to be, you know, $500 a day or something like that. And those are just complete, you know, don't take those numbers to be anything. But then we'll use that kind of basic number and double it, and that's basically what we have in the budget.
And then we raise money, and then we rewrite the script because we can't afford it. And then
That's true.
And then we go. But yeah, we had a real cool. I thought it was cool. I wrote a real cool fire whip, and we just couldn't figure out how to do it. So we changed it because that was going to be, you know, weeks of work, and we couldn't do it. So we rewrote it. And it ends up being better. I mean, oftentimes these restrictions where you can't afford to do something inspire you to come up with a better idea. Because sometimes the big fancy shot is the easy way out.
Yeah, it's true. Does that answer your question?